The galactic consensus had ruled the stars for millennia, a sprawling union of advanced species who prided themselves on their knowledge and unity. They believed they had mapped every corner of the galaxy, cataloged every civilization, and understood the limits of intelligence. To them, the idea of an unknown species emerging from the void was unthinkable. Yet whispers persisted. Stories of a mythical race called humans, beings of unparalleled adaptability and ferocity. These tales were dismissed as folklore, remnants of a primitive past. The consensus had no room for myths. They were the pinnacle of evolution, the masters of the cosmos. Or so they thought. When the fleet appeared on the edge of their territory, it was unlike anything consensus had ever encountered. Massive ships, sleek and angular, moved with precision and purpose. Their technology defied explanation, their presence radiating an aura of quiet menace. The consensus scrambled to respond, hailing the fleet with demands for identification. The response was brief and chilling. "We are humanity. We are real." Panic spread through the ranks of the consensus. The myths were real. The stories were true. And now, this fleet of human ships was sailing deeper into their territory, ignoring all warnings and protocols. The consensus dispatched a diplomatic envoy, hoping to reason with the intruders. The humans responded with a single unflinching message: "We have come to reclaim what was taken from us." The envoy returned with tales of cold, calculating beings who spoke of justice and retribution. The consensus was baffled. What could humanity possibly want? They had no records of contact with this species, no history of conflict. Yet, the humans spoke as if they had been wronged, as if the galaxy owed them something. The leaders of consensus convened in emergency sessions, debating how to handle this unprecedented threat. Some advocated for war, others for caution. But one thing was clear: humanity was not a myth. They were real, and they were here. As the fleet advanced, the consensus began to piece together fragments of the truth. Ancient records, long ignored, spoke of a species that had once thrived on a distant world called Earth. They were said to be relentless, resourceful, and capable of surviving against all odds. But Earth had fallen, consumed by its own hubris. The consensus had assumed humanity had perished with their planet. Yet here they were, not only alive, but stronger than ever. The realization struck like a thunderbolt. Humanity had not disappeared. They had evolved, adapted, and bided their time. And now, they had returned to claim their place in the galaxy. The first encounter between consensus and humanity ended in disaster. A patrol fleet intercepted the human ships, demanding they stand down. The humans responded with overwhelming force, obliterating the patrol in moments. The consensus was stunned. Their technology, their tactics, their very understanding of warfare, all of it was rendered obsolete. The humans fought with a precision and ruthlessness that defied logic. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. And they were sending a clear message. The galaxy was no longer consensuses to control. The age of myths was over. The age of humanity had begun. The fall of Earth was a cataclysm etched into the collective memory of humanity, once a thriving cradle of life. The planet had been pushed to the brink by centuries of environmental neglect, unchecked industrialization, and relentless conflict. Wars over dwindling resources ravaged nations, while rising temperatures and collapsing ecosystems made vast swathes of the planet uninhabitable. The final blow came when a global nuclear exchange erupted, not out of malice, but desperation. Billions perished, and the survivors were left to face a poisoned, barren world. Yet, even in the face of annihilation, humanity refused to die. They looked to the stars, not as explorers, but as refugees. The exodus was chaotic, a desperate scramble to escape a dying planet. Those who survived the journey into the void carried with them the scars of Earth's demise and an unyielding determination to endure. For centuries, humanity wandered the galaxy, a scattered and fractured people. They adapted to the harsh realities of space, learning to survive in environments that would have killed their ancestors. They colonized asteroids, hollowed out moons, and built habitats in the cold void between stars. Their technology evolved, driven by necessity and ingenuity. They developed faster than light travel, harnessed the power of stars, and created self-sustaining ecosystems to support their growing population. Yet, they remained hidden, avoiding contact with other species. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had learned the hard way that not all civilizations were benevolent. They observed from the shadows, gathering knowledge and biding their time. The stories of Earth became legends, passed down through generations as a reminder of what they had lost, and what they could never allow to happen again. Over time, humanity began to unite. The disparate colonies and factions realized that survival depended on cooperation. They formed a loose alliance, bound by a shared history and a common purpose. This alliance grew into a formidable force, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were not just tools of war, but symbols of humanity's resilience. Each vessel was a testament to their ingenuity, their ability to adapt and overcome. The fleet became their home, their fortress, and their weapon. Yet, they remained hidden, watching the galaxy from the shadows. They saw the rise of the galactic consensus, a union of species that claimed to bring order to the stars. But humanity saw through the facade. The consensus was not a beacon of peace. It was a system built on exploitation and inequality. The strong dominated the weak, and the powerful grew richer, while others suffered. Humanity's leaders debated their next move. Some argued for continued isolation, fearing the consequences of revealing themselves. Others believed they had a duty to act, to use their strength to protect those who could not protect themselves. The decision was not made lightly. Revealing themselves would mean risking everything they had built. But humanity had never shied away from difficult choices. They had survived the fall of Earth, endured centuries of exile, and emerged stronger than ever. They would not stand by while others suffered. The fleet was mobilized, not for conquest, but for justice. They would confront the galactic consensus, not as conquerors, but as liberators. The time had come to show the galaxy that humanity was not a myth. They were real, and they were ready to fight for a better future. The galactic consensus was unprepared for humanity's onslaught. Their confidence in their own superiority blinded them to the threat. They had ruled the galaxy unchallenged for so long that the idea of defeat was inconceivable. Their fleets were vast, their technology advanced, and their strategies honed over centuries of dominance. Yet, none of it mattered against humanity. The humans fought with ferocity and ingenuity that defied all logic. They did not adhere to the rules of war, as the consensus understood them. They struck without warning, targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and key infrastructure. Their ships moved with precision, exploiting weaknesses the consensus didn't even know they had. The first battles were a wake-up call. Entire fleets were decimated, not by overwhelming numbers, but by superior tactics and technology. The consensus scrambled to adapt, but every move they made was anticipated and countered. Humanity's adaptability was their greatest weapon. They had spent centuries surviving in the harshest environments the galaxy had to offer. They had learned to think on their feet, to improvise, and turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. The consensus, by contrast, was rigid and hierarchical. Their strategies were predictable, their commanders bound by protocol. Humanity exploited these weaknesses mercilessly. They used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and disappearing before the consensus could respond. They employed psychological warfare, spreading fear and confusion among their enemies. The consensus found themselves fighting an enemy they could not understand, let alone defeat. Every victory humanity achieved was a blow to consensus's morale, a reminder that their dominance was not absolute. The turning point came during the Battle of the Celestial Rift, a strategically vital region of space. The consensus had gathered a massive fleet, determined to crush humanity once and for all. They outnumbered the human forces 10-1, and their commanders were confident of victory. But humanity had anticipated this move. They lured the consensus fleet into a trap, using the rift's unstable gravitational fields to their advantage. As the consensus ships entered the region, they found themselves caught in a web of gravitational anomalies. Their movements slowed, and their formations disrupted. The human fleet struck with surgical precision, targeting command ships and crippling the consensus's ability to coordinate. The battle was a massacre. By the time it was over, the consensus fleet was in ruins, and humanity had secured a decisive victory. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves through galactic consensus. Their leaders were in disarray, their military in tatters. The species that had once ruled the galaxy with impunity now found themselves on the brink of collapse. Some advocated for surrender, recognizing that they could not hope to defeat humanity. Others called for desperate measures, even if it meant risking total annihilation. The consensus was fracturing, its unity shattered by the relentless onslaught of humanity. The once mighty Union was now a collection of squabbling factions, each looking out for their own survival. Humanity, meanwhile, pressed their advantage. They offered terms of surrender, demanding an end to the exploitation and inequality that had defined consensus. They were not conquerors, they declared, but liberators. Their goal was not a rule, but to create a galaxy where all species could thrive. As the war dragged on, the consensus's resolve began to crumble. Species that had once been loyal to the Union began to defect. Seeking peace with humanity, the humans welcomed them, offering protection and support in exchange for cooperation. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. The galactic consensus, once the undisputed masters of the galaxy, was now a shadow of its former self. Humanity had proven that they were not just survivors, but a force to be reckoned with. They had faced a mighty consensus and emerged victorious, not through brute strength, but through ingenuity, adaptability, and an unyielding determination to fight for what was right. The galaxy would never be the same. The galactic consensus, once a towering edifice of power and unity, lay in ruins. Its fleets were decimated, its leaders divided, and its influence shattered. Humanity's victory was not just a military triumph, but a moral one. They had not sought to conquer or dominate. They had fought to dismantle a system built on exploitation and inequality. As the dust of war settled, humanity extended an offer of peace to the remnants of the consensus. The terms were clear: an end to the oppression of weaker species, the redistribution of resources, and the establishment of a new galactic order based on fairness and cooperation. To many, it was a lifeline. To others, it was an ultimatum. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had a chance to rebuild, not as a hierarchy, but as a community. Humanity's approach to peace was as pragmatic as their approach to war. They understood that trust could not be built overnight, especially after centuries of conflict. They began by offering aid to the species most affected by the war, providing food, medical supplies, and technological assistance. They helped rebuild shattered worlds and restore ecosystems ravaged by centuries of exploitation. These acts of goodwill were not just gestures of kindness. They were strategic moves to demonstrate that humanity's intentions were genuine. Slowly but surely, the galaxy began to see humanity not as conquerors, but as protectors. The stories of their resilience and compassion spread, replacing the old myths of their ferocity with tales of their generosity. The dissolution of the galactic consensus was inevitable. Its member species, once bound by fear and coercion, now sought independence and self-determination. Humanity supported these efforts, encouraging the formation of smaller, more equitable alliances. They provided guidance and resources, but refused to impose their will. Their goal was not to replace the consensus, but to create a galaxy where no single power could dominate. This new order was chaotic and imperfect, but was also dynamic and inclusive. For the first time, species that had been marginalized and oppressed had a voice in shaping their future. Humanity's role was not to lead, but to facilitate, ensuring that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. As the galaxy began to heal, humanity's presence became a symbol of hope. Their fleet, once a weapon of war, was repurposed for peacekeeping and exploration. They patrolled trade routes, protected vulnerable worlds, and mediated disputes between species. Their technology, once used to destroy, was now used to build. They shared their knowledge freely, helping others achieve the same level of advancement. Yet, they remained vigilant. They knew that the galaxy was still a dangerous place, and that peace was fragile. But they also knew that they had the strength and determination to defend it. The legacy of humanity was not just in what they had done, but in what they had inspired. The galaxy, once divided and fractured, began to come together. New alliances formed, not out of fear or necessity, but out of mutual respect and shared goals. The stories of Earth, once tales of destruction and despair, became symbols of resilience and renewal. Humanity's journey from the brink of extinction to the forefront of galactic leadership was a testament to their indomitable spirit. They had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, it was possible to rise, to adapt, and to thrive. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement was not their victory over the galactic consensus, but the galaxy they helped create. A galaxy where species could coexist, where power was balanced, and where the mistakes of the past were learned from rather than repeated. They had proven that they were not just survivors, but builders. They had turned the myths of their ferocity into legends of their compassion. And as the galaxy looked to the future, it did so with hope, a hope that humanity had fought for, bled for, and ultimately made possible. The age of myths was over. The age of humanity had begun.